Symbol. Here's another symbol. This is also a symbol. In our society, we use many different symbols to communicate a vast array of different meanings that we don't want to explain time and time again. Sometimes we take older symbols and use elements of that in our newer symbols in order to graft a piece of that older symbol's meaning onto the newer symbol. That is why many people, when they see this symbol and they remember this symbol, they become a little concerned over what Trump's campaign team might be trying to communicate. Of course, other people see this symbol and they remember this symbol and they don't see what anybody else is worried about. Today we'll be exploring why some people see this symbol and think this symbol and not this symbol. Hi, my name is Robin, and this is Politics and Religion at the Dinner Table. Now, on its own, the symbol with the eagle on Trump's campaign tee could very well not mean anything. After all, the eagle is the symbol for America, and as we demonstrated, there's more than one symbol that looks very similar with the eagle. Although it should be noted that after World War II, Truman said that the eagle should always be facing to its right, whereas the Nazi eagle always faces to its left. However, living in the White House, Trump could have easily seen older renditions of the American eagle that did face to their left, and he may have thought that was the correct direction. So on its own, I would say that imagery on the campaign tee would not mean anything. Just like on its own, I would say that the America First on the campaign tee probably is nothing to be worried about. Now, granted, America First is a slogan that was heavily used by the KKK and hasn't been as popular among politicians since, but prior to that it was sometimes used in other contexts, and even if Trump was completely unaware of that slogan, it's not an uncommon two words that someone might think to put together, and he may have been unaware of that. Another thing that could easily be a coincidence is the fact that Trump bought exactly 88 ads. Now, most of you are probably completely unaware of what the 88 could even mean. I did a bit of research when I saw people talking about that, and apparently 88 is apparently used in many white supremacist groups because of its resemblance to the letters HH. When it comes to neo-Nazis, we can probably all guess what they're celebrating that starts with HH. Another thing, however, that was a lot more on the nose and a lot harder to deny was the red triangle in the Trump anti-Antifa ad. Now, it should be noted that the red triangle is not and has never been a symbol of Antifa. It is actually a Nazi symbol that is used to denote basically political prisoners in the concentration camps, particularly communists, which is actually interesting because one common accusation of Antifa is that Antifa is made up of communists, although it should be noted that Antifa actually also includes anti-authoritarians who would also be, by their very nature, anti-communists, as well as communism is an authoritarian regime. However, that is still a very interesting point. Of course, all of this would have been done by his campaign team, not by Trump himself, although one thing that Trump does claim he did himself, of course we don't really know for sure if it was Trump or his campaign team, was to retweet a white power video. Well, a video where a man is shouting white power. Now, Trump said that he did not actually see that portion of the video, and all he saw were a bunch of people showing him very enthusiastic support. However, it should be noted that the part of the video where a man starts shouting white power is only 8 seconds into the video, although it is entirely believable that Trump's attention span might not have been long enough to last 8 seconds. Other than that, which again, that could have actually been retweeted by somebody in his campaign, we don't really know. But other than that, everything else was most probably done by his campaign team and not Trump himself. However, that's not really a very good defense when there have been accusations of Nazi imagery in his campaign since 2016, and so he's certainly had a lot of time to look into it. And I know that if I was running a campaign and people kept coming back to me and saying, why is there all this Nazi imagery in your campaign? I would probably look into that and fire whoever was responsible. The fact that Trump hasn't shows that he doesn't have any interest in doing anything about it. And that's another thing. I would also, if I was attracting so many people supporting my campaign who did keep using that imagery, I would wonder what it was about my behavior that was attracting that sort of people. But Trump doesn't seem too concerned about this. In fact, he doesn't seem like he particularly wants to denounce any of his supporters, no matter how heinous and violent their acts. Even in Charlottesville, where someone straight up ran a car into a crowd of protesters, which you would think would be fairly easy to denounce, Trump was not really willing to go all out and condemn this person specifically. His speech actually starts out sounding like it will be good because he says, "We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence." And it's like, okay, if he had ended that thought there, it would have been perfect. But he continues that sentence with the words, "on many sides." And then he repeats, "on many sides," multiple times, trying to emphasize that, trying to soften the blow, like, well, okay, running your cars into a crowd of people and killing someone's bad, but both sides were behaving really violently and hatefully that day. Which is complete and utter bullshit. No, only one side had an egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. There is no reason to be saying on many sides. One side wanted to kill people. Well, one person wanted to kill people specifically. That's only one person means there's only one side. Everyone else was just protesting, which is in their right to do, whether they agree with your supporters or not. At the same time, he seems to idolize violent dictators who should be even easier to make yourself denounce because they're not even your voters. But when he's talking about Kim Jong-un, a violent dictator who runs concentration camps in his country and has done many horrifying acts of human rights violations while running his nation, well, Trump doesn't seem to have anything bad to say about him. Here's one quote of Trump's talking about Kim Jong-un.
He goes in, he takes over, and he's the boss. It's incredible. He wiped out the uncle, he wiped out this one, that one. I mean, this guy doesn't play games.
He's glorifying a man, to be perfectly clear, for killing members of his own family in the pursuit of power. And if you were in any doubt that he was glorifying him and not just saying, like, it's fascinating in a horrifying train wreck kind of way, although he said incredible, but in case you're wondering whether he actually likes Kim Jong-un or he was just amazed by what he did, here's another quote of Donald Trump, again about Kim Jong-un.
Hey, he's the head of a country, and I mean, he's the strong head. Mm-hmm. Don't let anyone think anything different. Right. He speaks and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same. Yeah,
no, you shouldn't. He does realize that The reason why people in North Korea sit up at attention when Kim Jong-un speaks is because they will be tortured and killed if they don't. An American college student who was in North Korea was tortured into a coma that he never recovered from for pulling a poster off of a wall. That kind of attention that he's getting, it's not the kind of attention that you get from a healthy country with citizens who love and admire you. It's the kind of attention you get from people who are completely terrified of you and want to do whatever it takes to keep you from killing them. The fact that Trump sees no opposition being expressed as even remotely desirable either means he's too oblivious to realize that if no opposition to a president is expressed, that means there's no freedom to express opposition, or he doesn't care. Either way, if you had any doubt, I have that Trump absolutely is fine with everything Kim Jong-un does. Here's another quote of Donald Trump about him.
No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love.
And when I first read that was a quote of Donald Trump's, I actually initially didn't believe it. I thought, okay, this is someone just making fun of how Donald Trump sucks up to dictators. So I went online to look for a video, and then I saw this. So yeah, apparently that is real, and I honestly don't see how someone can continue to support Donald Trump after he expresses views like that, but I suppose it's because if anyone admits how Donald Trump actually is after they've supported him for so long, the entire house of cards they built around themselves and believing that they've been part of a good and powerful and wonderful movement, all that'll come tumbling down and they'll be forced to face reality. So then Trump goes on to prime his audience to be expecting criticism from the Democrats so they won't have to think about it too much, saying that their issue with his statement is that it's not presidential. And then he goes on to mock what it would be like to be presidential and how boring that would be. And it's like, no, that's not the issue we have with it. It's perfectly fine for a president to be emotional and expressive and even romantic in their language. It's fine for him to be exciting and interesting. That's not the issue. If he had done that same speech and spoken about any political leader that, say, didn't send their own citizens to concentration camps for disagreeing with him politically, we'd be perfectly fine with it. But he said that about Kim Jong-un. Our issue isn't that he's not presidential. Our issue is that he looks into the face of evil and feels love. But of course, this isn't the only dictator Trump has praised. There's of course Vladimir Putin, who he has a lot of good words to say about. One was a quote of his talking about Putin back in 2013. At this point, he claims he met him. Later on, he claims he didn't. Either way, this really does show how much Donald Trump idolizes Putin.
I do have a relationship, and I can tell you that he's very interested in what we're doing here today. He's probably very interested in what you and I are saying today, and I'm sure he's going to be seeing it in some form. But I do have a relationship with him, and I think it's very interesting to see what's happened. I mean, look, he's done a very brilliant job in terms of what he represents and who he's representing. If you look at what he's done with Syria, if you look at so many of the different things.
Later, when Trump was president and there were probes into whether Russia had interfered with the election, Putin decided to cut hundreds of personnel from the U.S. Embassy in Moscow in retaliation. Now, most people would consider that particularly suspicious and almost threatening. Trump responded with sheer flattery.
No, I want to thank him because we're trying to cut down on payroll. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm very thankful that he let go of a large number of people, because now we have a smaller payroll. There's no real reason for them to go back. So I greatly appreciate the fact that they've been able to cut our payroll for the United States. We'll save a lot of money.
Well, it seems that, judging by the way that Trump praises Putin and how he is so eager to just fall over his feet to say how wonderful Putin is, I'm guessing that Kim Jonghoon isn't the only dictator that Trump has fallen in love with. Trumpy has two loves, how will he choose? Just kidding. Fortunately, Trump's dictators are just fine with sharing him around, because there's quite a few that he's fallen over himself to praise and kiss their feet and all the things that Trump does when he sees a dictator. For example, here's him praising Saddam Hussein, who was known for cutting the tongue out of the mouth of one of his critics and executing people based on tenuous suspicions.
He killed terrorists. He did that so good. They didn't read him the rights. They didn't talk. They were a terrorist. It was over.
Dear Trump, the reason why we do all this talking and investigating is to make sure that the people we execute are actually guilty of the crimes they've been accused of. It's a very important part of the whole process. Oh, and then there was that time that Trump called to congratulate Rodrigo Duterte. He's the president of the Philippines, whose drug policies have resulted in 2,500 deaths at the hands of police officers, and allows for police to open fire on unarmed accused individuals. Trump said the following about him:
I just want to congratulate you because I am hearing of the unbelievable job on the drug problem. Many countries have the problem, we have the problem, but what a great job you're doing, and I just wanted to call to tell you that.
And of course, it is a good idea to put yourself in a position to negotiate with other countries. And I suppose one way to put yourself in a position to negotiate with dictators is to endlessly praise them. They are certainly more willing to listen to him that way. But if that is his goal, then he should most likely at some point follow the praise up with maybe some demands, maybe ask them to stop their human rights abuses, but he never seems to move on to that stage. He seems perpetually stuck in the endless praise part of his plan, which makes me think it's not really so much of a plan at all, as he just really genuinely likes them, and maybe it's because they reflect his own ideals. Because, of course, Trump is a man who had peaceful protesters tear-gassed so he could take a photo op in front of a church. He is also a man who told police to not be too gentle when arresting suspects at a protest. This is also a man who, at his first election, when a protester showed up at his rally, said that back in his day they would have left in a stretcher. This is a man who admires and glorifies violence. And this is a man who encourages government force against its own citizens. And this is why I'm left to conclude that the reason he's so friendly with these dictators is not because he wants to push them toward peace and change, but because they reflect his own ideals. Well, anyway, this has been Politics and Religion at the Dinner Table. Until next time, bye-bye.